This is CBC Vancouver News.
A tractor crashes into an RCMP cruiser after a police chase down the Trans-Canada. One person is in custody. Investigators say that tractor may have been part of a protest. Plus,
the alert that was issued to the business community was the first step, but there needs to be more communication.
Business leaders want more protections after a string of violent attacks in the Lower Mainland this week that saw multiple businesses targeted with threats of extortion. Also,
there are seniors that should not be in a shelter. They should be in a home.
Extreme weather shelters are opening earlier than usual this year and are already pushing past capacity. Why a particular piece of legislation is getting part of the blame. Good evening, I'm Tanya Fletcher. Thanks for joining us. In the Middle East, the Israeli military says 13 Israelis and 4 foreigners have been freed in the second round of hostage releases. Hamas had delayed the release by several hours, accusing Israel of violating the terms of the temporary truce. The CBC's Israel Musa has more with our top story tonight.
It was a sight many had prayed for weeks. Israeli hostages and imprisoned Palestinians back in the arms of their families. Hamas was expected to swap more of its hostages Saturday for Palestinians held in Israeli prisons. But what was meant to be a second day of exchanges turned into a tense standoff.
إن الذي يتحمل مسؤولية إفشال هذا الاتفاق.
Hamas spokesperson Osama Hamdan accused Israel of violating the terms of a temporary ceasefire agreement by firing on Palestinians during the truce and not allowing enough humanitarian aid into the besieged territory of Gaza. Israel denies violating the agreement, but mediation by Qatar and Egypt has turned things around.
This pause was designed to get our people out, and that for us is obviously the priority, but also to provide a situation where food and medicine and water and fuel could go into the Gaza Strip.
Humanitarian groups are hoping much-needed aid will continue to flow into Gaza.
These trucks entering and not entering is the difference between life and death. They lack medical equipment, they lack medicine, they lack staff. And even in ordinary circumstances that would not be enough, but considering the number of serious injuries and the transfer of people who are wounded from the north to the south, these hospitals are struggling terribly.
Hamas is set to release at least 50 Israeli hostages and Israel 150 detained Palestinians during the 4-day truce. Israel says the truce can be extended an extra day for every additional 10 hostages freed. Israel Musa, CBC News, Toronto.
At Gaza's border with Egypt, the truce again saw aid trucks flowing in. More fuel trucks passed through the Rafah crossing, as did trucks carrying cooking oil. Yesterday's convoy was the largest since the war began, but aid remains far below pre-war levels, and today saw long lineups. The truce is also allowing people to take stock of the damage. The war has an estimated 1.7 million people in Gaza displaced. Meanwhile, another large protest against Israel's Gaza campaign was staged in London today. Organizers estimated the turnout at 300,000. Ahead of the protest, police vowed they would protect war memorials, and they warned against actions that could be deemed as inciting hatred. By late afternoon, though, they reported only a handful of arrests, all of them from what they described as a breakaway group. Well, back here in BC, one person is in custody after a dramatic and unusual scene unfolded along parts of the Trans-Canada in Surrey in the middle of the day. RCMP say over the noon hour, highway patrol officers came across a farm tractor on Highway 1 that was possibly involved in a protest. They tried to stop the tractor. It wound up smashing into a police vehicle before rolling onto its side. This was near the 176th Street off-ramp. One person was sent to the hospital with injuries and taken into custody, and traffic in the area was blocked for hours. Mounties provided no details as to why they think this tractor may have been involved in a protest or what that protest was about. Well, police in Surrey and Abbotsford are investigating threats of extortion directed at local businesses after a string of violent attacks this week. As Saurabh Sandhu reports, the business community is asking for more to be done to protect people.
It started Wednesday with an armed robbery at a money exchange in the middle of the day.
So it is very concerning to us that this incident happened during broad daylight, that these suspects were able to go into a business and rob them at the daytime.
Then later that night, shots were fired at another business just a few hundred meters away. Both cases are under investigation, but not believed to be connected. Surrey RCMP have since warned businesses about extortion attempts, urging them not to engage with the suspects and instead contact the police. Local business leaders are echoing that advice.
Not reporting it, trying to handle it on your own is not the approach.
The Surrey Board of Trade says the latest threats are a blow to a community already dealing with mounting challenges.
Our economy is compromised by a variety of things, and consumer safety, workforce safety is of great concern to the business community.
A similar warning was issued by Abbotsford Police earlier in the week. Police say they are aware of multiple businesses receiving a letter demanding money in exchange for protection from future violence.
The alert that was issued to the business community was the first step, but there needs to be more communication to businesses to say that you need to report the crime.
Surrey RCMP says it's partnering with police agencies throughout the Lower Mainland and is urging business owners to share any evidence, including surveillance footage, with them.
We have a table where we sit with business owners. They bring their concerns to that table so we can address it. And we have community response unit that are in each of our district.
The Surrey Board of Trade is holding a public safety consultation with the city next week to raise the concerns of the local business community and try to come up with solutions to ease the anxiety. Saurabh Sandhu, CBC News, Surrey.
A number of extreme weather shelters across BC are opening their doors earlier than usual this year, and many are already at capacity. In Abbotsford, demand is outpacing the spaces that are available. And as Janella Hamilton reports, there's simmering criticism over a piece of provincial legislation that some say could make the problem worse.
This is my pod. This is my little home.
61-year-old Cheryl Watson has been living at this shelter in Abbotsford for 6 months.
You can't even put it in words. I'm so grateful.
She says with the colder weather settling in, she feels lucky she has a warm place to sleep.
And they'll probably do the Christmas party like on the 21st or 22nd.
With temperatures dropping, emergency weather shelters across Abbotsford have opened early and are already over capacity.
Our extreme weather response shelters have already seen as many as 50 people accessing them on any given night. Demand that high usually doesn't happen until January, when we get prolonged stretches of very cold weather.
An additional emergency shelter will open in the coming weeks to try to keep up with the demand. And at the Salvation Army, shelters there are beyond full every night.
As the winter months get closer and closer and the days get shorter, it just becomes more and more challenging. And now it's just come to the point where we're just trying to get them to a safe and warm place to be at night.
In a statement, BC Housing says it understands the urgent need for overnight shelter spaces in Abbotsford, adding there are more than 5,200 shelter spaces open across the province. But advocates argue shelter spaces and housing are not keeping pace, and BC's proposed legislation is not the solution.
Housing is the key. We are not going to be able to shelter our way out of this housing crisis. It's just not going to happen. any more than we've been able to Narcan our way out of the overdose crisis.
Bill 45 would require cities to prove there is reasonably available alternative shelter for displaced residents before clearing a homeless encampment.
Shelter beds are needed all across BC, so we don't have enough shelter beds. So if this bill goes forward, there are some unintended consequences, which would be that we will see more encampments.
Watson says many families with kids and seniors like her are having to rely on shelters as the affordability crisis deepens.
There are seniors that should not be in a shelter. They should be in a home.
Janella Hamilton, CBC News, Abbotsford.
Let's take you to the Kootenays, and like many communities around the province, Cranbrook's food bank is struggling to keep up with surging demand. But as Corey Bullock is finding out, some of the youngest members of the community have stepped up to help out.
Gage Wilhelm and his grade 5 class at Kootenay Orchard School are a new batch of volunteers, finding out what the food bank does ahead of their school's holiday donation drive.
You're with some of your best friends and you're helping out with something that has quite a noble cause.
A noble cause with a big need.
We are definitely struggling in terms of getting enough donated food in.
And they need a lot. The Cranbrook Food Bank now has over 2,700 clients. That's up 53% over the last 2 years.
It's such an enormous increase in the number of people that we're seeing.
Not only that, the food bank is no longer receiving shipments of food from Calgary through the National Food Sharing System due to a surge in demand there. It's relying on Food Banks BC and the Kelowna Food Bank to help supplement its needs. And it's not just the food that's in short supply. She says 2 full-time employees have recently moved on to other positions.
Excellent!
Thankfully, an army of volunteers, including some of the city's youngest residents, continue to make sure everyone's fed.
It's always fun getting to enjoy the fresh air and knowing that you're helping with something.
You know, some kids have experienced, issues with food security, and lots haven't. And so it's just really nice for them to understand that there's a lot of people in our community that are struggling with food security.
Rose says donations from local grocery stores and monetary donations from the community are also essential, and that hunger affects all walks of life.
It's entrepreneurs. It is sometimes unhoused people. It's coaches. It's your neighbor. It's someone who checks you out at Superstore. It's someone at Walmart. It's everyone. Hunger doesn't discriminate.
A lesson these young volunteers are learning firsthand. Corey Bullock, CBC News, Cranbrook.
Well, following a historic vote, Cowichan Tribes is moving forward with its plan to reclaim jurisdiction over child and family services. The vote passed late last night with roughly 85% support in what the chief has called a defining moment in the tribe's history. Earlier this month, the First Nation was said to look to develop its own law. As part of the plan to keep children in the community, the nation is doubling the number of social worker staff. With the law now passed, Cowichan Tribes is waiting for a ratification officer to certify the results. Indigenous Fashion Week hosts an event every year called the Red Dress Show. It sees creators wear red dresses to honor missing and murdered Indigenous women and children. One of the hosts and performers took the opportunity to draw attention to the issue by creating a fabric that displayed the faces of some of the missing.
Honor and remember them in a good way, because in the media we've always been portrayed as drunks, addicts, runaways, and all of that. So this is, for me, was a better way to get their pictures out there and honor them.
BC has the highest number of missing and murdered Indigenous women of all the provinces and territories. It is a record year for killer whale sightings in the Salish Sea.
To see so many orca breach in such a short time and so many individuals doing it at the same time, wow, that's amazing.
Washington's Orca Behavior Institute has recorded 250 transient whales as of the end of last month. Records show there was a sighting every day for 241 consecutive days. A local conservationist says some whales are drawn here to feed as seal and sea lion populations flourish. The record has been broken 9 times in the past decade. Well, playing for the NFL's Miami Dolphins has taken Javon Holland a long way from his hometown of Coquitlam. And in yesterday's game against the New York Jets, he went a long way on the field as well.
Throws it into the end zone into a lot of traffic, and there's a pick on the other side. And coming back from the end zone is Holland, and Holland is out to midfield, and Holland is inside the 40, and Holland is inside the 20. Can you believe this? That is insanity.
Holland stunned fans with an incredible 99-yard interception return to give him his first career touchdown, and his family couldn't be prouder. His father, Robert Holland, is a former player and coach with the BC Lions.
All the extended family, they went crazy, and everybody's blown up everybody's phones and people trying to call, and we just were cheering and laughing and happy for him because he finally got the pick. He's got a whole country representing him.
He's now counting on Canadian fans to help vote Javon Holland into the Pro Bowl with the rest of the NFL's top players. Up next, we head to India, where delays in the rescue efforts means workers will be trapped longer than hoped. We'll have the very latest after the break. Stay with us.
Mark your calendars. CBC's annual Food Bank Day is coming up on December 1st. Kick off the holiday season by watching our full day of special programming, streaming online at cbc.ca/foodbankday and on CBC Gem. It's all for an important cause, local food banks across BC. For more information, head to cbc.ca/foodbankday. We'll see you December 1st.
Welcome back. Taking you overseas, and Russian drones hit Ukraine's capital this morning. It was the largest such strike, officials say, since the war there began. It started before dawn. Warnings continued for 6 hours. Officials say 71 drones were launched. They say most were shot down, but the debris caused damage across the city. 200 buildings lost electricity and 5 people were injured. It came on the day Ukraine commemorates the 1930s famine, a catastrophe it remembers as a genocide orchestrated by Soviet leadership in Moscow. Mechanical failure has hit India's rescue effort for workers trapped in a collapsed highway tunnel, and it's unclear how long that delay will be. The tunnel caved in November 12th. A heavy drill has been working through 60 meters of debris, but it was damaged yesterday while being moved. 10 to 15 meters remain. Handheld equipment will have to drill it now. The 41 workers are receiving supplies through a shaft. What caused the cave-in is unclear right now. In New York, the state's one-year window to file sexual abuse suits, otherwise barred by statute of limitations provisions, has ended, but not before more than 2,500 lawsuits were filed. Now advocates are pushing for an extension or a more permanent way to seek legal accountability for abusers. The CBC's Chris Reyes explains.
Thank you so much.
New York City Mayor Eric Adams, actor Jamie Foxx, musician Axl Rose, all sued in recent days for sexual assault. The claims from decades ago. All have denied the allegations.
This is something that has never happened. I don't even recall meeting the person.
The cases were filed last week in the final days of the New York Adult Survivors Act, a law that gave a one-year window for anyone to sue their alleged abuser, regardless of when an offense happened, as long as they were 18 or older at the time. New York Governor Kathy Hochul signed the law last year.
Which sounds harmless, statute of limitations, what could be wrong with that? Except it was a barrier to justice for too long.
Victim advocates lobbied hard for the law, insisting that the justice system needed to catch up to the evolving understanding around sexual crimes.
Some people who were victims of rape or victims of sexual assault may not have viewed themselves in that light even years or decades ago. And these laws allow them to have time to change their perception, to realize that what happened to them did in fact include assault or rape, and to then vindicate their rights, bring these cases.
Since the law went into effect, thousands of cases have been filed under the act, including against former President Donald Trump, who was found liable last May for sexually abusing the writer E. Jean Carroll in an incident that happened in the 1990s. Other high-profile cases include New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, Bill Cosby, and media personality Russell Brand. Also sued New York's prisons and hospitals, suggesting system-wide problems around sexual abuse. The law expired Thanksgiving Day, but New York lawyer Michael Wilhelmine said there could be legal grounds for files made in the days following because the expiry date fell on a holiday.
Given the urgency of the timeline now, we're obviously working sort of around the clock to make sure that anyone who has a viable and legitimate claim of sexual assault has an opportunity to get that claim heard in on time.
Some victim advocates are now pushing for an expansion of the law nationwide and an indefinite extension of the expiration date, including eliminating statute of limitations altogether on sexual assault claims. Chris Reyes, CBC News, New York.
You're looking at a live shot up Georgia Street on this Saturday night. Well, the sunny but cool stretch of weather continues for much of BC, certainly through the second half of this weekend. Your 5-day forecast is next.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox.
On December 1st, join us for CBC British Columbia's annual Food Bank Day for a special day of broadcasts. The event is a yearly tradition for many, and we're bringing you a new edition of CBC's Food Bank Day that you can watch and stream live on CBC Gem and cbc.ca/BC. Make the season kind and donate at cbc.ca/foodbankday.
And it's time for our full look at the forecast. Let's start with our overnight lows and really uneventful weather-wise right across BC. And take a look at Fort St. John. Normally our overnight low minus 15 degrees. Only -4, and in fact, tomorrow we'll barely get below that freezing mark, so certainly not as cold as we're used to for late November. Here's why. This ridge of high pressure still sweeping across BC, giving us some kind of that high overcast cloud, but really nothing in the way of precipitation, save for a few periods of snow off and on the north coast. But we'll stay dry and clear for most of the next few days right across BC. Here's our temperatures. Even in Cranbrook, our overnight low is supposed to be a lot colder than that, but right around that 0 mark through the Okanagan and northern BC as well. And so we won't call it boring, we'll call it uneventful, and we will take what we can get this time of year. Here's the 5-day forecast for Metro Vancouver. As we said, breaks of blue skies, some sunshine, a few clouds, but temperatures right where we should expect them to be for this time of year. And that is your late news for this Saturday, November 25th. For news anytime, anywhere, download the free CBC News app. You can always find us online as well. We're at cbc.ca/BC. Thank you for joining us. Have a great night.